In a world that often rushes forward without pause, where the cries of human pain are drowned out by noise and neglect, there exists a silent force, vast, sacred, unstoppable, that works beyond the senses, beyond time, beyond logic. It is intercessory prayer, a bridge between souls, a living energy that transcends distance, breaks barriers, and transforms destinies. Based on the timeless teachings of Dr. Joseph Murphy, this text is not merely a guide. It is a revelation. This is not about chanting empty words into the void. This is about a high spiritual technology, an ancient art capable of moving unseen mountains. For those you love, even if they're far away, even if they've lost faith, even if they don't know you're praying for them. Here you will discover that you, yes you, can become a channel of healing, transformation, and miracles. When you align your subconscious mind with the infinite source, get ready, because once you step into this knowledge, you will never see prayer the same way again. You will understand that intercession is not a passive act, but an act of creative power, governed by the spiritual and mental laws that shape reality. You can be the lighthouse in someone's storm. You can be the bridge between chaos and peace. You can touch a soul without saying a single word. Welcome to the invisible power of intercessory prayer, the silent voice that changes the world. Let us begin. This book was not conceived as a collection of theories, nor as a devotional essay to entertain the religious mind. Nor was it born to feed the spiritual ego of those who seek distinction among believers. This book was written as a practical tool for every soul that has understood, or is beginning to glimpse that thought is power, that the mental image is a seed, and that prayer is not supplication, but a channel of vibrational action capable of healing, transforming, and elevating the life of another human being, even if that person is far away, unconscious, or even in opposition. I have written these pages not as a doctrinal treatise, but as an area of application. Each chapter, each technique, each story has been included with one purpose: to show you that here and now you can become an active, benevolent presence in the world through the silent power of your mind, aligned with good. You do not need to belong to any organization. You do not need titles, degrees, or intermediaries. You only need to accept a truth that every wise person has proclaimed in various forms, that the invisible precedes the visible, and that thought, when directed with faith, sustained with love, and released with detachment, is the most powerful force in the universe. Intercessory prayer is not the monopoly of saints. It is a natural ability of the awakened soul. It is not an emotional act, it is a science. And like every science, it has laws, methods, errors to avoid, and conditions to respect. But above all, it bears fruit, and those fruits can be seen, measured, and told. They are in the families that reconciled, in the bodies healed without contact, in the decisions guided without pressure, in the souls that found light without knowing why, because someone somewhere prayed for them correctly. If you take this book and read it as a passing inspiration, you will gain comfort. But if you apply it rigorously, you will achieve transformation. Not only in others, but in yourself as well. Because when you pray well for another, you yourself are being restored. You are remembering your true nature, a channel of divine love, an agent of invisible order, a presence that heals without touching, guides without imposing, and blesses without demanding. That is your identity, and this book exists only to help you embrace it. Now begins the journey, silent but irreversible, inner yet infinitely fruitful, one where by praying you become the answer. Welcome, the invisible power of intercessory prayer. Based on the teachings of Joseph Murphy, we have noticed that over 80% of those who visit our channel are not subscribed. You can support this project by pressing the subscribe button and liking the video. Thank you for inspiring us to keep creating more and better content for you. Are you ready to transform your life? Chapter 1. The Mystery of Praying for Another. Most men and women pray only for themselves, driven by the urgency of their personal needs, by the pressures of the world, by the anguish of illness. However, there is a type of prayer whose effectiveness does not depend on selfish requests, but on a higher intention: intercessory prayer. This modality does not originate from the desire to solve an immediate problem, but from a deep recognition of the mental unity among human beings. A recognition that is neither emotional nor moral, but functional. You can positively influence another person's life through the conscious use of your mind. This influence is not esoteric or abstract, but a natural, constant, and demonstrable law, just like the law of gravity. Praying for another is activating a mental bridge, invisible to the physical eyes, yet as real as the cable that transmits electric energy between two stations. Understanding this principle is the first thing the reader must grasp if they wish to access true spiritual power. Jesus said, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them." This statement, often interpreted sentimentally, holds a technical key to the functioning of the subconscious mind. When two minds harmoniously focus on the same image, when two consciousnesses sustain a constructive idea without contradiction, what truly happens is that both tune into a specific vibratory field that activates a response. Being gathered in his name does not refer to a religious figure, but to a law of mental correspondence. It means vibrating at the same frequency of good, order, health, and peace. Praying for another, then, is making yourself one with them in an image of wholeness. Not to convince, not to control, but to awaken in yourself such a clear image of their well-being that this image, held with impersonal love, becomes a spiritual mold from which their subconscious can draw. Many ask, is it not presumptuous to pray for someone without their permission? Am I not interfering with their destiny? To this I say that they misunderstand the impersonal nature of the creative mind. The other's subconscious is not a closed or independent field, but part of one indivisible mind manifested as multiple individuals. The one who prays now does not impose but proposes, does not force but offers. The other's soul will take what resonates with its own level of acceptance. Therefore, intercessory prayer is not coercive, but invitational. Your prayer acts as a frequency offered into the mental ether. If the other person consciously or subconsciously accepts it, that frequency begins to manifest as change in their experience. If not accepted, no harm occurs. Under no circumstances can you violently alter another's free will, but you can establish a more favorable mental environment for their awakening. We must now understand that the subconscious mind is not local. This means it is not confined to a body or a space. Thus, when you pray for someone in another country, another continent, or even another plane, your prayer reaches them. If you can feel that you are with them at that moment, in the subconscious plane, there is no distance, no time, no separation. Every mind is one mind expressed in different degrees. Just as a drop of water contains the entire pattern of the ocean, your directed thought can touch and modify the inner state of another human being, regardless of where they are. This truth, which may seem mysterious at first, is confirmed by the direct experience of thousands of people who, without physical contact, have seen family members healed, legal situations resolved, self-destructive habits transformed, all through heartfelt, repeated, and conviction-filled prayer. It is not magic or theology, but a mental science ignored by modern education. Those who wish to become effective in intercessory prayer must begin by examining their motivation. Praying for another cannot be a strategy to demonstrate power, nor a way to interfere with their decisions, nor an attempt to mold them in our image. True intercession arises from a mental state of understanding, where one recognizes that the only valid will is that of universal good, and that praying is offering the other the possibility to align with that will. We do not pray to save, but to illuminate. We do not pray to impose, but to mentally present a model of health, harmony, or peace so clear that the other can make it their own without struggle. This is why so many prayers fail. The one who prays has not dissolved their own judgment, anxiety, or negative image of the other. If you pray for someone and at the same time still consider them sick, mistaken, or lost, you are sending two contradictory orders to your own mind. In that case, your prayer will be rejected even by yourself. There is a fundamental key every intercessor must apply. Before praying for another, you must correct your vision of them. You cannot ask for health for someone you internally consider incurable. You cannot ask for prosperity for a being you visualize as a failure. You must see the other as already healthy, already whole, already prosperous. Not because they objectively are, but because that is the image you wish to imprint on their subconscious. Just as a sculptor does not start with a rock, but with a mental vision of the final form, you must start with an internal vision of the other as already blessed. That mental image is what your subconscious takes as a mold. That image is the true prayer. Words are only vehicles. The image is the content. If there is no image of success in your mind, your words of success lack power. The subconscious does not respond to empty sounds, but to pressures charged with emotion, repeated firmly, held with certainty. A woman came to see me in New York. She wanted to pray for her daughter, who was hospitalized for a deep emotional crisis. She said, "My daughter is broken, Dr. Murphy. She doesn't want to live anymore. What prayer can I make for her?" I answered gently but firmly, "As long as you keep seeing her as broken, your prayer will be sterile. You have to see her as a perfect soul, sustained by divine intelligence, surrounded by love and understanding. Visualize her radiant, strong, free. Even if everything in your mind screams otherwise, hold that image until it becomes more real than your fear. Only then will your prayer work." A few weeks later, this mother wrote me, "I did what you told me. I resisted at first, but every night I mentally repeated, 'I see my daughter free and happy. I see my daughter smiling with peace.' Today she called me to say she feels peaceful for the first time in months. This is not a miracle. It is law, spiritual science applied with discipline. Understanding this requires abandoning the emotional superstition that often surrounds the word miracle. Praying for another is not a transaction with a capricious deity, but an act of mental transfer. Just as you can transfer heat from one body to another, you can transfer peace, clarity, or mental health from one consciousness to another. But that transfer does not happen by personal will. It happens when you become a channel of good, when your mind empties of ego and fills with personal certainty. That certainty is not arrogance. It is not "I will make them heal." It is that the good already within them will manifest now. That is intercessory prayer in its highest form, not asking but revealing. The mystery of praying for another is not that you have more power than they do, but that for one moment you decide to hold for them an image they cannot hold for themselves. Just as a sick person needs someone to hold their head to drink, so too someone in despair needs you to hold the image of their healed soul until they can do it themselves. That is praying for another, holding the true image when everything seems to scream the opposite, not because you are superior, but because for that moment you are awake and they are not. That is your privilege and also your responsibility. In the next chapter you will learn that this connection is not symbolic or sentimental, but a law of exact resonance between two minds, because every true prayer is the transmission of organized energy, and when that energy is directed with certainty, it becomes action in the real world. If you wish to learn how to use it precisely, then continue, because this is only the beginning. Chapter 2. The Science of Spiritual Connection. To understand the effectiveness of intercessory prayer, goodwill alone is not enough, nor is fervent belief. It is necessary to comprehend the principle behind how it works, just as a chemist understands the structure of a molecule before combining substances, or as an engineer studies the laws of tension before building a bridge. The human mind, when understood as part of a universal vibratory system, ceases to be a closed container and reveals itself as an active extension of a single consciousness expressed through all. That consciousness is not divided between you and the other. It only manifests individually, but in essence, it is one. And this unity is not a spiritual metaphor, but an operative principle of the mental law. Therefore, every effective intercessory prayer is an act of connection, not imposition, an act of alignment, not intervention. When you decide to pray for another, the first truth you must assume as operational is that your mind and theirs are already united through the mental field of which you both are a part. This field, spoken of by ancient mystics and now beginning to be recognized by quantum science under the name of the unified field, is not a vague energy or an elevated feeling. It is a real vibratory fabric that transcends all space and time, in which every thought, every emotion, every intention is imprinted as a wave. That wave is not lost nor cancelled, nor left hanging in the air. It is transmitted, intertwined, reinforced, or dissolved, depending on the quality and persistence of its emission. That is why your thoughts about another are never neutral. Everything you think about another communicates not through words but through resonance, not through gestures, but through vibration. If this truth were understood in childhood, humanity would have eliminated war, because we would understand that thinking hatred, even silently, is transmitting poison, and prayer then is transmitting medicine. Now, if the mental field is an ocean, each individual mind is like a wave. At first glance, each wave seems separate, but in truth, it is a local expression of the same body of water. The mental field, like the ocean, recognizes no boundaries between one wave and another. Every thought you hold inevitably accepts the entirety of the field. It cannot be otherwise. This is why your mental states are not private. You may imagine that your hatred towards someone does not affect them because you do not express it, but you are mistaken. Hatred is a vibration transmitted even if you do not say a word. Similarly, love, peace, forgiveness, when firmly held within you, act upon the other mind, even if the other does not know it. This is the basis of mental intercession. You do not need to announce it, justify it, or ask permission, because you are not invading. You are offering an elevated vibration in the common ocean of consciousness. Whoever is ready will receive it. Whoever is not simply will not register it. But you will have already sown the correct seed. This principle may shock the modern ego that insists on absolute individuality. But that ego does not understand that thought is not an internal phenomenon confined to the skull. Every thought is an emission, and every emission finds its natural receiver. Physical distance does not alter this truth. The subconscious mind does not inhabit three-dimensional space. Its operation is non-local. This means, precisely, that it does not depend on where you are or when you do it. You can pray today for someone who lived years ago, and the effect will manifest as a change in your own perception of the past, which in turn modifies your emotions and therefore your present. You can pray now for someone on the other side of the planet, and if your prayer is pure enough, their subconscious can pick up that frequency as an inexplicable positive impulse, a sudden decision, a sudden improvement. This is not magic, it is energetic law. Quantum physics has revealed a phenomenon called quantum entanglement, according to which two particles once connected maintain their bond beyond space. When one is altered, the other responds regardless of how far away it is. This observation, though not yet fully understood, confirms what spiritual sages have maintained for millennia. Every mental connection leaves an energetic trace, and that trace can be reactivated through intention. If you have loved, hated, forgiven, or simply thought intensely about a person, a line of contact already exists between your mind and theirs. Praying for that person is not creating a new channel, but reactivating one that already exists. What changes is the quality of the transmission. If until now you have thought about that person with fear, your prayer will be ineffective until you eliminate that fear. Because praying from fear is emitting a distorted signal. It does not help, it confuses. That is why you must first purify your own intention. This is the most technical aspect of intercessory prayer. It is not only about wishing the best for the other, but about yourself entering a vibratory frequency capable of sustaining that best. It is not enough to want the other's health. You must enter a consciousness of health yourself. It is not enough to ask for prosperity for them. You must feel yourself as a channel of universal prosperity, because the subconscious does not respond to your words, but to your state. The other does not receive what you say. They receive what you are. A man in San Francisco came to one of my talks and said, "I pray every night for my alcoholic brother, but every time I do, I end up crying out of anger. What am I doing wrong?" I replied, "You are praying with the frequency of judgment. Your true emotion is not love but resentment. Your mind says, 'Heal him,' but your subconscious screams, 'He ruined my life.' As long as this contradiction exists, your prayer will be noise. First, you must heal your emotional memory. Only when you can see your brother as a complete soul without needing repair will your prayer be medicine and not lament." The next year he wrote to me, "I have learned to pray for him as one who lights a lamp, without expecting him to see it immediately. I no longer feel frustrated. I feel at peace. And the strangest thing, my brother has been sober for 6 months." I replied, "It is not strange, it is law." Understanding this law requires abandoning emotional superstition and adopting a scientific attitude toward the mind, because intercessory prayer is not a ritual, it is an application of universal principles. Just as an engineer builds a bridge with exact formulas, you can build a mental bridge between your consciousness and another's if you understand how minds interlink. It is not magic, not blind faith, but the science of the soul, and you can practice it. In the next chapter, you will learn how to prepare your mind as a channel for this invisible force. Because before sending a signal, you must ensure you are in tune, and that tuning is not achieved with words, but with exact alignment between your thought, your emotion, and your intention. The prayer that transforms is not the one shouted, but the one vibrating in coherence. Here is where true practice begins. Are you ready to become a conscious transmitter of good? Then prepare yourself, because praying for another truly begins by becoming yourself what you wish for them. And that requires discipline, understanding, and a precise technique that you are now about to discover. Chapter 3. Preparing your mind as a channel of blessing. Before beginning any work of spiritual intercession, the first step is not to look at the other, but to look at yourself. This is a truth many forget, and that is why they fail. They try to change the other without having cleansed themselves inwardly. They pray for the other to heal, but their own mind is sick with judgment, resentment, fear, or despair. Under such conditions, prayer does not flow. It stagnates, because the power of intercessory prayer does not lie in the emotional desire to help, but in real capacity. And that capacity demands that you, as a channel, be free of obstructions. You cannot transmit light if your own focus is dirty. You cannot transmit peace if your mind is full of unresolved grudges. You cannot ask for freedom for others if you are imprisoned by doubt. Preparing your mind as a channel of blessings is, then, a prior and necessary work. It is like tuning an instrument before playing. No healing melody can arise from an out-of-tune soul. The first requirement to spiritually tune yourself is forgiveness. And I do not mean forgiveness as a moral virtue, but as a technical necessity. If you hold on to resentments, you are sustaining a low frequency. That frequency directly interferes with the prayer you want to send. Many try to pray for loved ones while carrying unhealed wounds from their past and wonder why they get no results. The reason is simple. The subconscious cannot simultaneously channel a picture of fullness for another and an emotion of internal hostility. Both frequencies cancel each other out. Forgiveness is not a reward you give to the one who offended you. It is the way you free your internal system to become a clean antenna capable of receiving and transmitting the energy of universal good. Every resentment acts as interference. It does not matter if you believe you are right or if the other never apologized. As long as you hold the emotional memory of the offense, your prayer will be weak, erratic, or simply ignored by the mental field. That is why I now ask you to honestly observe your inner self. Ask yourself, is there anyone I still silently criticize mentally? Is there a scene I relive with bitterness every time I remember it? Are there names, faces, or voices that still trigger a negative emotional reaction in me? If the answer is yes, then your first act of intercession should not be directed outward, but inward. You must cleanse your subconscious of that poison before you can operate as a true channel. Forgiveness is the most powerful spiritual detergent there is, but it is not applied with empty words. You must visualize the person who hurt you, imagine them blessed, happy, and mentally say, I release you, I release myself. You are no longer an obstacle in my channel of love. Repeat this image and phrase each night until all emotional reaction disappears. This is a technical work, not psychological, not emotional, but spiritual. And without this cleansing, you cannot advance. Once you have begun the process of forgiveness, you must deal with other types of mental toxins: criticism, doubt, and pity. These three attitudes, which may seem harmless or even justified, are actually silent poisons that corrupt every prayer. Criticism places you in an illusory position of superiority that disconnects your mind from the compassionate flow. When you criticize, you mentally affirm, I know more than him, I am better than her. And that stance closes the channel of healing energy, because no one can transmit blessing from a pedestal. One can only do so from equality. Doubt, on the other hand, is an active denial. It is not enough to wish the other well. You must believe without a shadow of doubt that their subconscious can respond. You must trust the law, not visible evidence, because evidence always comes later. Praying with doubt is like planting a seed and digging it up every hour to see if it has sprouted. That habit produces no fruit, and pity, though it may seem noble, is a disguised form of judgment. When you feel pity for another, you are mentally saying, you are beneath me, I am above you. You are not seeing their divine essence, but their apparent misery. And what you see, you transmit. Intercessory prayer must never be born from pity. It must arise from the clear vision of the other as already whole, already complete, already free. Now that you understand this, you are ready to practice proper visualization. Because to pray is not to speak. It is to see, to feel, to hold such a vivid image of the other in their ideal state, that your mind transmits it as a vibratory reality. And to achieve this, you must train yourself. Each night before sleeping, choose a person you wish to pray for. It doesn't matter if they are near or far, alive or deceased. Imagine their face, breathe deeply. Then create in your mind a scene where this person appears exactly as you wish them to be, healthy, happy, at peace. If they are sick, visualize them walking with vigor, laughing, eating with pleasure, embracing joyfully. If they are in conflict, visualize them smiling in harmony with their loved ones. If confused, visualize them reading clearly, making wise decisions, saying firmly, "Now I understand." Do not repeat the scene anxiously. Do it calmly, like watching a beautiful movie. Then say mentally, "This is so. This is already done," and go to sleep. This exercise should be repeated at least 7 nights in a row, not because the law demands it, but because your subconscious needs to become accustomed to that image. Not everyone is trained to hold a steady visualization. Many at first get distracted, doubt, or tire. It doesn't matter, persist. Each night you reinforce a signal, and that signal, when sustained with elevated emotion, crosses any barrier. You cannot decide when the result will manifest, but you can decide to send it with precision and confidence. And that is all the law requires from you. A woman wrote me from Buenos Aires. She said, "My son is lost in drugs. I have talked, cried, begged. Nothing works, right? What else can I do?" I replied, "Stop talking, stop crying, stop begging. Start seeing each night. See him in your mind as a free, healthy man, working, studying, helping. Don't speak to him from fear anymore. Speak to him from within, with the firm image of what he can be. He doesn't need your tears. He needs your vision." 4 months later, that young man voluntarily asked for help and entered rehabilitation. It was coincidence, not law. Remember, intercessory prayer is not a plea directed to heaven, but a broadcast directed to the universal mental field. You are the transmitter. Your mind is the channel. Your image is the signal. If your channel is clean, if your signal is clear, the result will come, not by magic, not by merit, but because every correct seed planted with faith germinates when it finds suitable soil. And in the next chapter, you will understand how that seed can activate even at a distance, because the subconscious does not need physical presence. It only needs an exact frequency. And that frequency is called impersonal love sustained with coherent vision. Prepare yourself. What comes next is not more complex, but deeper. You have learned to see the other in their ideal version. Now you will learn how that vision works without barriers, without limits, without time, because in the mental world all is already connected. The only thing left is for you to know how to operate it. Chapter 4. Real Cases of Effective Intercessory Prayer. So far we have examined the theoretical principles that underpin intercessory prayer. We have unraveled its spiritual mechanics, explored the science of mental connection, and learned the importance of preparing the channel, the mind of the one who prays, with clarity, purity, and a clear vision. But all knowledge, no matter how profound, needs to be confirmed by experience. The mental law is not validated in temples or academic treatises. It is confirmed by facts, by observable results, by the transformation of concrete lives. For this reason, this chapter does not present new ideas, but demonstrations. And every case presented here is real, verifiable, and not an exception, but a confirmation of a universal law that always responds when applied with precision and persistence. You will not read here about miracles in the magical sense of the word, but in its legitimate sense, the natural result of correctly applying the spiritual law of directed thought. The first case is that of a mother in Texas whose son had been sentenced to 15 years in prison for a drug trafficking-related offense. This woman, named Margaret, wrote to me not to ask me to intercede for her son, but to ask how she could do it herself. She told me, "I've tried everything, lawyers, letters, visits, but he is hardened. He says he's worthless now. Can I pray for him, even if he doesn't accept it?" I replied that not only could she, but she should, because her love for him was the purest channel through which the healing image could be transmitted. But I warned her, do not pray for a prisoner. Do not pray for a guilty man. Pray for a free child of God, righteous and at peace. Even if the evidence says otherwise, hold that vision firmly. Margaret accepted the task with a commitment few possess. Every night before going to sleep, she would sit in her chair and visualize her son as a transformed man. She imagined him speaking with a calm voice, studying, helping other inmates, writing letters full of hope. While doing this, she repeated a silent affirmation. I see my son as God sees him. I see my son free from mental chains. His spirit is free and his life is renewed now. She persisted for months. She did not question, she did not try to control, she simply saw. And one day she received a letter. Her son wrote with a new tone, I don't know why, but I've started reading again. I feel like changing. I volunteered to teach other inmates. I'm not the same. She did not cry. She just wrote me, now I understand. I did not change him, but I saw him differently. And he responded, this is the power of sustained vision. This is the result of intercessory prayer maintained without interference, without contradictions, without anxiety. It was not Margaret who caused the change. It was the law of resonance activated by her perseverance. The second case took place in a hospital in Los Angeles. A nurse named Judith, trained in meditation techniques, decided to apply intercessory prayer as part of her professional routine. Every day before starting her shift in the intensive care unit, she spent 5 minutes alone visualizing each patient as already healed. She did not know their exact diagnoses or personal histories, but she took their names, visualized their faces, and mentally clothed them in perfect health. She repeated, the spirit of life flows now in every cell of their body. Their mind is at peace. Their heart beats in harmony. She never shared this with her colleagues. She did not do it to gain merit. She did it because she knew her mind, free from fear, could be a channel of real blessing. Within a few months, doctors began to notice unusual improvements in her unit. Fewer post-operative infections, faster recoveries, greater calm in sedated patients. One head of department said to her, your ward has the lowest complication rate in the hospital. What is your method? She only smiled. She didn't explain. There was no need, because when prayer is done correctly, the result is the only explanation necessary. Judith was not recognized with awards, but many patients, waking from anesthesia, asked who was that woman who prayed for me at night. Although no one had told them, they felt it, because intercessory prayer is not invisible to the soul that receives it. It may be imperceptible to the ego, but never to the subconscious. The third case is that of a Canadian businessman, director of a metallurgical company with over 200 employees. For years he faced labor conflicts, occasional strikes, lawsuits, and low internal morale. He sought help in management manuals, motivational coaching, and leadership courses. Nothing worked sustainably. One day he attended a conference on mental law and was struck by a phrase, "You cannot change the behavior of others, but you can change the image you have of them, and that image transforms the environment." He decided to experiment. He said nothing to his managers. He did not change any policies. He only changed his mind. Every morning, before entering his office, he took 20 minutes to close his eyes and visualize his employees as a harmonious team. He imagined peaceful conversations, fair decisions, creative ideas, mutual respect. He repeated, "My employees are blessed. Their minds are clear. Their work is dignified. Together we prosper in peace." At first he noticed subtle changes, fewer complaints, more collaboration. Then came bigger results. Old conflicts were resolved without intermediaries. Productivity rose. Absences dropped. In 5 years, his company not only avoided strikes, but was recognized for its workplace climate. When he wrote to me, he said, "I did not change the external conditions. I changed my internal image." And the company responded like a body that heals when thought is corrected. These cases differ in context, but are identical in essence. In all of them, there was a mind that decided to see beyond the visible. In all, there was persistence, inner purity, and a clear image sustained without contradiction. And in all, the result was not immediate, but inevitable. Because mental law does not operate by whim or chance. It always responds, and responds in exact proportion to the clarity, intensity, and repetition of the transmitted thought. This must be clear. Intercessory prayer does not produce miraculous results because a book says so or a teacher teaches it, but because it responds to a law as exact as the law of gravity. If you plant the correct image in the soil of the collective subconscious, the fruit will come. There are no exceptions, only conditions. In the next chapter, you will learn the most specific techniques of silent visualization, remote transmission methods, and common mistakes you must avoid. Because now that you know the law works, the only thing left is to learn to apply it with mastery. You are ready to become not only a prayer, but a conscious transmitter of mental light. So continue. The path to effective prayer does not end in emotion, it begins in understanding, and you have already crossed the threshold. Chapter 5. The Silent Technique of Mental Seeing. If until now you have understood that intercessory prayer is not an act of blind faith, but rather a technical exercise of vibrational influence, then you are ready to learn one of the most subtle and powerful tools in the entire applied spiritual science, the silent technique of mental seeing. This practice is not based on verbal formulas repeated like a ritual, nor on desperate pleas directed at an external entity. Instead, it is founded on the deliberate construction of an inner image held with such clarity and persistence that it inevitably transmits itself to the subconscious field of the being for whom you pray. This technique requires no words, no physical contact, and no conscious participation from the other person. It is based on a fundamental principle. Imagination sustained with emotion and conviction becomes the vibratory mold of the collective subconscious. Therein lies its power and precision. To understand this technique, you must accept a truth ignored by most. Imagination is not a childish mind game or an escape from reality, but the primary instrument by which all human experience is created. There is no scientific advancement, artistic work, political solution, or act of love that was not first conceived in someone's imagination. The error is to assume that imagination is harmless or irrelevant. Yet, every image held with emotion impresses itself on the subconscious and projects into reality. And when you imagine another person intensely, you touch them, influence them, and propose an inner model that can be accepted, adapted, or rejected, but never ignored. Thus to pray is to imagine well. It is to see clearly what must be, even if the eyes say otherwise. It is to be a silent witness of a transformation that has not yet manifested in time, but is already sown in the vibratory plane. Mental seeing is a silent technique because it depends on no external expression. There is no voice, no movement, no hands raised to the sky, only a scene precisely constructed on the screen of your consciousness, a scene in which you see the person you pray for as already transformed, already healed, already at peace, not as a general or abstract image, but with concrete sensory details. If you pray for someone who is sick, it is not enough to think that they will heal. You must imagine them rising with energy, eating with appetite, walking firmly, speaking with joy. If you pray for someone who is confused, it is not enough to think that they will gain clarity. You must visualize them making the right decision, speaking with confidence, giving thanks for their new lucidity. It is not about vaguely wishing a good outcome. It is about portraying that good as if it were already real. The subconscious does not respond to good wishes. It responds to clear images, repeated with emotion sustained without contradiction. Now, what do you do if it is hard to maintain that image because external evidence is overwhelming? What do you do if doubts assail you, or the image of the problem is stronger than that of the solution? Here comes a valuable auxiliary tool, indirect affirmations. Instead of saying, "He is healthy," when you cannot fully believe it, you can say, "The peace of God fills his mind now." This phrase does not affirm an observable fact, but it establishes a desired frequency. It does not describe a physical condition, but it invokes a higher vibration. Affirmations like, "His soul is in harmony with divine order," "The healing power surrounds him now," or "Eternal love guides and protects him," are not attempts to change what you see, but to transmit what you know is possible. And by repeating them serenely while visualizing the other in a state of grace, you are planting a seed that the subconscious can accept without resistance. It is important here to avoid a common mistake, the desire to control the outcome. Many pray for another with anxiety, measuring each day for progress, wondering if their prayer is working, seeking external signs, as if negotiating with an external force that responds to merit. But the subconscious does not operate under pressure. If you pray and then doubt, visualize and then question, affirm and then worry, you are both sowing and uprooting the seed at the same time. Mental seeing requires total surrender. Once the image has been formed and transmitted with conviction, you must let it go, not because you abandon it, but because you trust. True faith does not consist in desperate repetition, but in certain visualization, followed by resting in the law. A woman who learned this technique in one of my workshops in Chicago wrote to me 6 weeks later, "I prayed for my alcoholic husband every night, seeing him return sober, helping at home, laughing with our children. At first I couldn't believe it, but I focused only on the image. I stopped fighting. I stopped talking about the problem. I only saw his free soul. This week he told me, I don't know why, but I don't want to drink anymore." There was no pressure, no manipulation, only an image sustained with impersonal love and released with faith. This is not suggestion. It is resonance. Her husband's subconscious picked up a frequency without resistance because it was not imposed but offered. And when the soul is ready, that image becomes impulse, and the impulse becomes action. That is why I tell you, practice mental seeing with discipline. Choose a fixed time. Use a comfortable chair. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Invoke a phrase such as, "The image of peace flows now from my mind to Eli." Then build Ciara's scene. Do not force it, do not embellish it. Make it plausible. If possible, recall it with sensations, sounds, colors, movements. Hold the image for at least 5 minutes. Then say mentally, "It is done." And open your eyes. Do not analyze. Do not check your phone. Do not review their condition. You have sown. Now let the earth do its part. This is the technique of mental seeing. It is not hypnotic suggestion nor visual magic. It is the most silent and most powerful act you can perform for another human being. Because when you see another as God sees them, whole, free, healthy, and you hold that vision without doubt or need for immediate results, you are acting as a true channel of good. You are not changing the other. You are revealing in them what already is, even if they do not yet know it. And that revelation, sustained with love, has the power to awaken any sleeping soul. In the next chapter, you will learn how this technique, practiced from a distance, can have effects just as real as direct contact. Because on the mental plane, there are no distances, only frequencies. And you are already learning to operate from the highest one. Prepare to understand how to pray for someone without seeing them, without speaking to them, without touching them. Because in the science of the spirit, the invisible is no less effective, only more subtle, and you are learning to operate on that level. Chapter 6. Praying at a distance with precision, etc. Many wonder if it is possible to influence another human being's life without being physically present, without speaking to them directly, or even having recent contact. This question arises from thinking conditioned by the senses. The average person believes that to act upon someone, they need to be near them, see them, touch them, or speak to them. However, all spiritual science, all applied metaphysics, and even the most advanced observations of mental physics agree on this. Thought is not limited by space. Intercessory prayer does not require proximity because it operates through the mental field, which is not subject to distance. Just as a radio signal crosses continents without wires or visual contact, your thought, when clear, charged with intention and sustained with focus, can reach another person's subconscious mind anywhere in the world. This is not a belief. It is a law that operates independently of your knowledge of it, but when you know it and apply it consciously, its power magnifies. For a distant prayer to be effective, it must bring together 3 elements in a single act: image, emotion, and word. The image is the form you give your thought. You cannot pray for someone vaguely. You must represent them in a concrete scene with sensory details, as we have already explained in the previous chapter. Emotion is the fuel that gives life to that image. It cannot be a weak or contradictory feeling. It must be a clear emotion, certainty, impersonal love, or anticipated gratitude. And the word is the mental or verbal affirmation that encapsulates and fixes the content of that image and emotion. When these three elements combine, they act like a laser beam, concentrated, coherent, and directed energy. Most prayers fail because they scatter their energy. They imagine one thing, feel another, and say a third. There is no alignment, no focus, but when the image, emotion, and word coincide, the prayer becomes a powerful signal that penetrates the other's subconscious without resistance. To achieve this coherence systematically, I recommend a specific practice that I have taught for years and that has produced consistent results: the 3 times a day method. This method requires no complicated rituals or mystical schedules. It only demands regularity, attention, and mental discipline. It consists of stopping 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night, for 3 to 5 minutes to perform the act of intercessory prayer with the 3 elements integrated. For example, if you are praying for the health of a sick friend, in the morning you imagine her rising strong, breathing freely, embracing her children. You feel gratitude as if it has already happened and say mentally, "Thank you, Father, because her health has manifested. She is whole." At noon, you repeat the operation with the same image or a coherent variation, and at night, you do the same before sleeping with the intention that the image imprints on your subconscious as you rest. This practice is not mechanical repetition. Each session must be lived as a renewed act. You are not accumulating merits. You are reinforcing a signal. You are impregnating the common mental field with a specific frequency, and the clearer, more constant, and more sincerely emotional that frequency is, the faster it will manifest. You do not need to inform the other person, nor do you need approval or permission. What you are doing is not manipulation, it is a vibratory offering. If the other's soul is ready, it will receive. If not, the energy will return to you as peace, because the very act of emitting impersonal love orders your inner self. Here comes the principle revealed by Master Jesus in Mark 11:24. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. This is not a metaphor, it is a technical instruction. The key lies in the verb tense. You have already received it. Prayer should not arise from the desire to obtain something in the future, but from the certainty that it has already been granted in the invisible realm. Because the subconscious does not operate by chronology, it operates by state. When you pray believing the result is yet to come, you introduce the vibration of waiting, and waiting is prolonged. But when you pray from the state of having received, even if there is no physical evidence yet, you create a perfect mold for manifestation. This is the secret of operative intercessory prayer. It is not insistence nor supplication, but certainty. It is seeing with the mind's eye what the physical eyes have not yet seen. And by holding that vision, the invisible becomes visible. A law student in Caracas applied this method for 40 consecutive days, praying for his sister, who suffered from severe depression. He did not speak to her about his prayer. He did not try to convince her of anything. He only visualized her every morning, noon, and night, walking through the university, smiling with her friends, writing poems, preparing breakfast. He felt gratitude as if it were already a fact, and he repeated, "Her light shines now, her soul sings, she is free." At the end of that cycle, his sister asked him to join her for a walk. She said, "I don't know what's happening, but I no longer feel that weight." He said nothing. He smiled. He knew the mold had been imprinted and life was responding. Not all cases resolve in 40 days. Some require weeks, others months. Not because the law delays, but because the resistance of the subconscious, the one praying or the one prayed for, determines the pace. But the efficacy of prayer is not measured by the speed of the result, but by the clarity of its emission. You are the transmitter, your mind is the instrument. Image, emotion, and word are the 3 components you must tune. And time, that element so troubling for the impatient, is simply the medium through which the invisible becomes visible, according to the field's receptivity. Do not control time, do not analyze progress, do not ask if it is already working. Praying at a distance is planting a seed in the common field of consciousness. You do not watch the root grow. You maintain the image of the fruit. That is your task. The rest leave to the law, because the law never fails. And when applied with precision and faith, it produces exact, harmonious, and permanent results. In the next chapter, you will learn to identify and correct the errors that block this practice, because many pray correctly for a time and then sabotage their own work with doubts, fears, or unconscious judgments. And if you want to become a true intercessory prayer warrior, you must know not only what to do, but also what to avoid. You have come far. Now you will learn to protect your sowing because the power is already within you. You only need to keep it free from interference. Chapter 7. Common Obstacles and How to Overcome Them. In every applied science, technical knowledge must be accompanied by awareness of possible errors that can distort its application. Just as a surgeon must know what not to cut, or a chemist must know which elements not to mix. Likewise, the intercessory prayer practitioner must familiarize themselves with the mental obstacles that can nullify the effect of their prayer or delay its manifestation. The fact that a spiritual law is true does not mean it will always work in your favor. Its effectiveness depends on the charity of the channel through which it is expressed, and you, as the channel of that law, must remain aligned, pure, and steady. Therefore, knowledge of the most common errors is not a mere pedagogical addition, but an essential component of spiritual practice. Here, then, we will examine three main interferences: doubt, attachment to the result, and fear of failure. You will learn to recognize and deactivate them before they hinder your invisible work. Doubt is the first enemy of the prayerful. It is not rational doubt that questions intelligently, but emotional doubt that interrupts the flow of thoughts like, what if it doesn't work? What if it's too late? What if I am imagining in vain? This doubt does not arise from lack of evidence, but from the mental habit of looking at appearances instead of the principle. But whoever understands the law knows that its function is not to look at the ground but to sow. The sower does not doubt the corn because he does not yet see the ear. He trusts the seed. Doubt, then, is a lack of trust in the law itself, and is fought not with argumentation, but with silent repetition of certainty. Every time you feel doubt, do not argue with it. Simply affirm, the law responds, the image is sown, the result is already on its way. This affirmation does not persuade the ego but strengthens the subconscious channel. You do not need to eliminate all doubt. You only need not to give it control over your attention. The second obstacle is attachment to the result. Many pray correctly with a clear image, elevated emotion, and precise affirmation. But then, once the prayer is finished, they start looking for signs, controlling circumstances, watching the behavior of others as if their prayer were an order the universe must promptly obey. This mental state introduces tension, anxiety, pressure, and all pressure contradicts the vibration of faith. Attachment to the result is a disguised form of unbelief. The true prayerful sows the image and lets it go, not because they don't care, but because they know the law is already operating. They do not need to control because they trust. Here it is useful to recall the words of Jesus, "Ask believing that you have already received." If you believe you already have it, why would you watch over it? Why would you constantly talk about it, analyze it, discuss it with others? That only indicates you have not yet let go of the image, and if you don't let it go, you do not allow the soil of the subconscious to transform it into fruit. The third obstacle is fear of failure. This fear is not always expressed as conscious dread. Sometimes it takes the form of excessive caution, a skeptical attitude, phrases like, "I'm going to try, but I'm not getting my hopes up." This kind of mental stance weakens the signal from the start because the subconscious does not operate on partial intention. It requires surrender, decision, and that you place yourself, even if only for 5 minutes, in a state of complete conviction. Fear of failure is, at its core, an emotional anticipation of defeat, and when that anticipation is sustained, it becomes an image, and the image, as you know, is what is transmitted. Therefore, before praying, clear your emotional field. If there is fear, transfigure it into affirmation. I do not act by my own power. It is the law of good that operates now. I am only a channel. This inner humility eliminates fear because it withdraws focus from the individual self and places it in universal intelligence. Now, what happens when the person you wish to pray for does not believe in these principles or even actively opposes them? Does it make sense to pray for someone who rejects this teaching? The answer is yes, absolutely, because you are not praying to convince them or to change their conscious mind. You are transmitting an image at the subconscious level where personal beliefs do not exist, only resonances. The subconscious does not oppose, does not debate. It only receives what vibrates with sufficient intensity and clarity. If that person's soul is ready to accept the image you hold, they will accept it, even if their conscious mind mocks it. Many parents have prayed for skeptical children. Many wives have prayed for unbelieving husbands. And in every case where the prayer was maintained with impersonal love and persistent vision, there were results. Because the law does not respond to theology, it responds to vibration. And that vibration is generated by the image you hold, not by the words they say. But what to do when it seems not to work? This is one of the most frequent questions. People who have prayed for weeks, even months, with dedication, but see no change at all. The first thing you must understand is that prayer always produces an effect. Always. What happens is that often that effect does not manifest in the form or time you expect. Sometimes what you visualize as healing must first go through a process of emotional release that appears as worsening. Sometimes what you project as external harmony must go through a necessary internal rupture. The result does not always manifest linearly, but the law is operating. If you have prayed with a clear image, sincere emotion, and constant affirmation, then the mental field is already altered, and that alteration will find its channel at the appropriate time. Do not judge it by the calendar. Do not measure it by immediate external behavior. Your task is to sow in trust. A teacher once taught me this with a phrase I have never forgotten. When prayer is true, change is inevitable, not immediate, but inevitable. Therefore, you must persist without obsession, repeat without anxiety, trust without conditions, because the field responds. The subconscious listens, the sown image acts. You only have to keep your channel free of interference. And if you feel that doubt, attachment, or fear have contaminated your practice, do not condemn yourself. Do not give up. Simply start over. A renewed prayer, made with humility and clarity, can repair weeks of inner disorder because the law does not punish. It only responds, and always according to the dominant image you hold. In the next chapter, you will learn to expand the scope of your intercessory prayer. Until now, you have worked with one person at a time, but there are techniques to pray for groups, communities, even nations, because a trained mind can become a focus of collective transformation. And if you have come this far, you are already ready to operate not only as an individual healer, but as a silent agent of spiritual order in your environment. The field is open, and you already know how to sow. Now you will learn to sow on a large scale because the world needs your prayer, and you are learning to pray as few know how to do it, consciously, with love, and with inner authority. Chapter 8. The Prayer Circle as a Multiplier. By this stage in your spiritual understanding, you already know that a single trained mind, when operating with clarity, conviction, and impersonal love, can profoundly alter the mental field of another person. But what happens when several minds align with the same purpose? When they vibrate at the same frequency and hold the same mental image in silent unity? What then occurs is a phenomenon of exponential amplification. It's no longer a single signal in the field, but multiple transmitters broadcasting coherently, generating a resonant field that penetrates faster, deeper, and with greater permanence. This is not collective hysteria or mass management. It is pure vibrational law, known to sages of all times under different names: the power of the circle, the mental chain, the silent agreement. In spiritual terms, it is the practical fulfillment of a biblical statement that contains more physics than religion. 1 strikes down 1,000, and 2 put 10,000 to flight. Deuteronomy 32:30. This statement is not a symbol of enthusiasm. It is a mathematical formula. In the vibrational world, when 2 or more minds align with the same intention, their effect does not add up. It multiplies, because each mind acts as an amplifier of the other's field. And if they are synchronized, not necessarily in the same place or at the same time, but in the same emotional and imaginative frequency, the signal they emit overcomes resistances that a single one could not easily surpass. That is why forming a prayer circle is not just a devotional strategy, it is an operational tool. It is a technical decision to enhance the effects of intercessory prayer, requiring no religious structures, ecclesiastical permissions, or hierarchies. It only requires vibrational agreement, clarity of intention, and discipline in practice. An effective prayer circle can consist of 2, 3, or more people. The number does not matter. What matters is that all participants hold the same image, the same affirmation, and the same emotion regarding the object of prayer, whether a person, a family, a business, a city, or a collective cause. The essential thing is not that they pray physically together, but that they transmit in synchrony, even from different places. Synchrony is not necessarily simultaneity. It is vibrational coherence. It is agreeing that at a certain time of day, each member of the circle will pray alone, but with the same visualized scene, the same repeated phrase, and the same feeling of certainty. When this practice is maintained for several days or weeks, the mental field of the recipient begins to be bombarded, not with imposition, but with a continuous current of vibratory light that sooner or later manages to penetrate and activate their own consciousness. Let us see a real example. In the city of Lima, 5 women formed a silent circle to pray for one of their sons, who had fallen into severe depression after losing his job. They were not therapists or metaphysics experts. They only knew this teaching and decided to apply it rigorously. Each one, from her home, 3 times a day, visualized the young man already recovered, working enthusiastically, greeting with confidence, organizing his life clearly. All repeated the same affirmation. He is a channel of divine order. Clarity guides his steps. Joy is his new law. They did not meet. They did not speak to each other during the process. They only synchronized their intention and visualization. After 2 weeks, the young man suddenly expressed his desire to study programming. 2 months later, he received a scholarship. No one had told him about the circle, but when recounting his change, he said, "I felt like someone was pushing me towards something new. I don't know where it came from, but I felt it real. That force was not an idea, it was a field. It was the joint signal of 5 minds vibrating coherently." To form an effective silent prayer circle, follow these steps. Clearly define the common objective. It is not enough to say, "We pray for Pedro." Agree on what image you will hold. For example, Pedro working happily or Pedro reconciled with his family. Establish a common visualization scheme. Each member should represent the same scene with similar elements: place, facial expression, specific action. This allows the created field to be homogeneous. Select a shared affirmation. One single phrase, brief and powerful, that everyone repeats mentally. Divine peace reigns in his mind. His path is illuminated, full of strength and clarity. Determine approximate times. It is not necessary that everyone prays at the exact same hour, but there should be a common time window. For example, between 6 and 7 a.m., noon, or before sleep. Practice in silence. Do not discuss results. Do not talk to the prayer recipient. Do not look for signs. Trust the invisible work. Energy needs calm, not anxiety. A businesswoman in Sao Paulo formed a circle of 7 people to support her sales team during a financial crisis. Every day, for 3 weeks, they visualized the office with movement, joy, closed deals, and confident faces. The affirmation was, "Infinite intelligence guides this company. Every employee is a channel of success." They did not meet physically or share reports, but the atmosphere changed. The internal climate harmonized, and without knowing why, one manager said, "I feel we are better," even though the numbers don't show it yet. Days later, a great opportunity appeared and saved the quarter. It was coincidence for some, but for those who had prayed in harmony, it was a result. The silent prayer circle, when well guided, becomes a spiritual radar projecting order, peace, health, and harmony, where chaos seemed to reign. It requires no religious beliefs or dogmatic affiliations, only a mental agreement. Together we will see the good and hold it firm. When 2 or more minds do this, the field responds. And if this practice is carried out with love, without judgment, control, or expectation of reward, its fruits are inevitable. In the next chapter, you will face a greater challenge, interceding for those who have hurt you, for those you believe you cannot forgive. Because where this law seems hardest to apply is where its power reveals itself most deeply. If you can bless your enemy, then you have transcended the ego and merged with the intelligence of universal love. And that is the highest prayer, to see in the enemy the same light you desire for your friend. Are you ready for that? Then keep reading, because the healing of the world begins where judgment ends, and that place is closer than you imagine. Chapter 9. The secret of interceding for those who have hurt you. In every authentic spiritual journey, There comes a point when doctrine ceases to be comfort and becomes a demand. That point arrives when you are asked not only to apply what you have learned to benefit your loved ones or protect your interests, but to heal those who have hurt you, who have betrayed you, who have insulted or abandoned you. This is, without a doubt, the highest form of intercessory prayer, not because it requires greater technique, but because it demands the transmutation of resentment, which is the most corrosive energy of the soul. Most prayer warriors fail here not for lack of knowledge, but because they have not understood a fundamental truth. Forgiveness is not a moral act toward the other, but a medical act toward oneself. As long as you do not forgive, you cannot pray with power. While you keep anger alive, the channel of your mind remains blocked, and no image of good can flow from a mind that still harbors the poison of judgment. Forgiveness, as we understand it here, is not an emotional agreement with what happened. It is not justifying the offense, nor denying the pain. It is letting go of the chain that keeps you tied to the past. While you hold the grievance in your emotional memory, you remain connected to that person by an invisible bond of negative energy. That union drains you, limits you, makes you relive the scene over and over like a film that prevents you from creating new images. That is why when you decide to intercede spiritually for someone who has hurt you, you are performing an inner surgery. You are removing a psychic infection that contaminates your entire field. It is not about saving the other person. It is about liberating yourself. And from that freedom, only then can you see the other with healthy eyes. You can imagine them as already redeemed. You can visualize them as already healed. And that seemingly impossible act becomes the most powerful form of prayer because it comes from a mind that no longer defends or justifies itself, but blesses. How is this process undertaken? Not suddenly, not with instant formulas. It is done, as with everything in the mental law, with discipline, decision, and precise technique. The first step is to identify the wound that still binds you. Ask yourself, who, when remembered, still activates a knot in my stomach, anger in my throat, or a dry sadness in my chest? That is your field of work. Do not run from it. Do not say that already passed. If your body still reacts, emotional memory is not erased by willpower but transmuted by practice. Once you identify it, accept this truth. That person, in their ignorance or pain, did what they believed necessary or inevitable, but now they no longer have power over you unless you continue to give them energy. This statement is not resignation but recovery of power. And from that recovery, you can begin true intercessory prayer. Now imagine that person not as they were at the moment of the wound, but as they could be if free from fear, hatred, and confusion. Do not use the image of their wounded face. Do not repeat the scene of the harm. Build a new image, that person speaking peacefully, smiling, helping others, walking with dignity. It is difficult at first. The ego resists. It says, "Why should I bless the one who cursed me?" But the law replies, because by doing so, you stop vibrating at their frequency and recover your own. You are not validating their error, you are dissolving your bond with that error. As long as you keep hating them, you remain their prisoner. When you sincerely bless them, you free yourself. Accompany this image with an indirect affirmation. Do not say, "I forgive you," if you do not yet feel it. Say instead, "The light of good surrounds them. Their soul is at peace. Their path is corrected by love." Repeat this phrase whenever the memory assaults you. Do it without violent emotion. Do it like taking a bitter medicine, with the awareness that it is necessary. If you are consistent, the day will come when you remember that person without pain, anger, or knots. That is the sign that your prayer has taken effect, not over the other, but over you. You have healed your field, and now your mind can again be a pure channel of blessing. A woman in Mexico City once wrote to me, "How can I pray for my father if he was violent my entire childhood?" I replied, "Do not pray for the father he was. Pray for the soul he could have been if he had not been wounded. Visualize him as a man who protects, guides, embraces. Even if he never was, that image is what will heal your wound, because your mind needs a new image to live by." She persisted for 6 weeks. She cried at first, then not anymore. One night she dreamed he looked at her and said, "Forgive me. I did not know how to do it better." He had already died, but she woke up with peace. She wrote, "Now I can pray for others. Before I couldn't. I carried a shadow inside. That shadow was resentment. and when I dissolved it, I became luminous. This is the miracle of blessing the one who cursed you. It is not a pious gesture, it is a vibratory operation. It is mental alchemy. You take a dense charge, hate, resentment, vengeance, and transmute it into an emission of light. The other may never know it, but you will, because your life will begin to flow, your body will begin to heal, your prayers will regain effect. The mind that has forgiven, even silently, becomes a pure instrument, not because it has forgotten, but because it has transcended. In the next chapter, you will understand why once this inner purity is achieved, your entire life can become a continuous channel of blessing, not through isolated acts of prayer, but through a constant attitude, a permanent intention, a radiation that flows from you toward everything you touch. Because you are not here just to heal a few, you are here to become a source of good, and that begins when judgment ends. You are almost ready. Only one step remains, the most silent, the deepest, the most powerful. Chapter 10. You are the extension of divine love. Everything we have covered up to this point, each technique, each principle, every example, every cultivated mental image, has the purpose of guiding your consciousness toward this final revelation. You are not praying as someone separate from God. You are praying as an expression of God Himself. You do not invoke an external force to come down and act upon another. You become a conscious channel of that force, and through you, it flows, acts, transforms, and restores. There is no power outside of you that you must beg for. There is a power within you that you must release, and that release happens when you stop thinking of prayer as an occasional practice and begin to live it as a permanent attitude, as a state of being, as an extension of divine love in your thoughts, in your words, and in your silent presence. God's compassion is not an emotion. It is an operating law that sees perfection where the senses perceive error. When you pray for another with true compassion, you are seeing beyond their appearance, beyond their behavior, beyond their history. You are seeing what the eternal Spirit already sees, the seed of perfection contained within every human being. That gaze does not judge, compare, or demand. It simply sees, and by seeing, it transforms. Because the act of seeing spiritually is not passive, it is active, creative, and healing. Divine compassion acts through you when you hold in your mind the highest image of another human being, even if that person does not yet recognize themselves in that image. You do not wait for them to change to visualize them differently. You visualize them differently so that they may change. This is praying as God prays, not with words, not with demands, but with pure vision. And when you adopt that attitude as the axis of your life, you no longer need to close your eyes to intercede. Your very presence becomes prayer. Your daily thoughts become blessing. Your gaze, your gestures, your silence, your way of walking and speaking transform into invisible channels through which the light of divine compassion radiates to others. You no longer pray in moments. You are continuous prayer because you no longer act from your ego, from reactive emotions, from personal judgments, but from the inner center where eternal good dwells. Turning your entire life into constant intercession does not mean becoming ascetic or monastic. It means keeping your mind in a state of conscious vigilance. It means remembering with every interaction that you influence the mental field of the other person, with every thought you have about them. If you judge them, you weaken them. If you criticize them mentally, you confuse them. If you pity them, you bind them. But if you see them as already redeemed, you strengthen them. If you visualize them as wise, you inspire them. If you affirm them internally as guided, you connect them to their inner path. This is not superstition, it is vibration, and you are vibrating every moment. Therefore make every thought about another a blessing, and you will be praying without ceasing, as Paul recommended in his letter to the Thessalonians. To facilitate this continuous attitude, you can adopt daily formulas that program your mind to emit only uplifting thoughts. These formulas are not prayers. They are internal declarations that reorganize your vibration and act as mental beacons. Here are some you can repeat when starting the day, entering work, facing difficulty, or receiving bad news about someone. Every being I think of, I bless. Every being I see, I uplift. Every being I speak of, I illuminate. My mind is a channel of good. Only good flows from me, and every person I meet today is fertile ground where I sow love, peace, and clarity. I do not react. I respond with vision, and I do not judge, I recognize, and I do not fear, I radiate. God thinks through me, his compassion sees through my eyes. These phrases, repeated upon waking, walking, or hearing news, are not mere reminders. They are reprogramming. You are training your mind not to return to the old habits of judging, fearing, competing. You are aligning your frequency with the only vibration capable of transforming the world: impersonal, operative, conscious love. And when that happens, you no longer need special moments of intercessory prayer, because any moment can be one. A glance, a gesture, a silent thought directed at someone passing by you. You no longer need to be asked for help. You offer it because you know it is never lost, because you know every image of good sent from your mind becomes a seed in the common field. A woman in Toronto understood this when she heard her daughter speak hatefully about a schoolmate. Instead of correcting her with words, she simply closed her eyes and visualized that classmate hugging her daughter, working together, laughing. She said nothing, only held that image several times a day for 3 days. On the 4th day, her daughter said, "Mom, I think I'm going to invite Clara over. I think I judged her wrong." The mother did not impose, did not preach, did not indoctrinate. She just saw the good, and the good responded. This is how the world transforms, not from reaction but from vision, not from judgment but from compassion, not from the desire to change the other, but from the certainty that, in essence, they already are what you visualize. Now you know, you are an extension of divine love, not a subject, not a spiritual beggar, but an extension, a channel, an instrument. And every thought you have, every image you sow, every emotion you choose to hold has impact. Silent, yes. Invisible, perhaps, but real and irreversible when constant. Do not underestimate your prayer. Do not minimize your vision. You are more influential than you imagine. You are shaping a world that will transform as you see it transformed. Thus this book ends, but a new stage begins within you, because now you know how to truly pray. Now you know how to see. Now you know how to release. Do not stop. Keep going. The world awaits your intercession, and you already know how to sow it. Do it silently. Do it joyfully. Do it without need for recognition. Because the good you transmit returns multiplied. Because every mind you bless blesses you. Because when you pray, you are not only helping others, you are reminding yourself who you truly are. And that is the greatest miracle of all. Amen.